The Celtic languages are descended from Proto-Celtic, or Common Celtic, a branch of the Greater Indo-European language family. The term Celtic was first used to describe this language group by Edward Lhuyd in 1707, following Paul Eve Pezerin, who had already made the explicit link between the Celts described by classical writers and the Welsh and Breton languages. Modern Celtic languages are mostly spoken on the northwestern edge of Europe, notably in Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Brittany, Cornwall, and the Isle of Man, and can be found spoken on Cape Breton Island. There is also a substantial number of Welsh speakers in the Patagonia area of Argentina. Some people speak Celtic languages in the other Celtic diaspora areas of the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. In all these areas, the Celtic languages are now only spoken by minorities, though there are continuing efforts at revitalization. Welsh is the only Celtic language not classified as endangered by UNESCO. During the first millennium BC, they were spoken across much of Europe, in the Iberian Peninsula, from the Atlantic and North Sea coastlines, up to the Rhine Valley and down the Danube Valley to the Black Sea, the northern Balkan Peninsula and in Central Asia Minor. The spread to Cape Breton and Patagonia occurred in modern times. Living languages. SIL Ethnologue lists 6 living Celtic languages, of which 4 have retained a substantial number of native speakers. These are the Gaelic languages, and the Brittonic languages. The other 2, Cornish and Manx, were spoken into modern times but later died as spoken community languages. For both these languages, however, revitalization movements have led to the adoption of these languages by adults and children and produced some native speakers. Taken together, there were roughly 1 million native speakers of Celtic languages as of the 2000s. In 2010, there were more than 1.4 million speakers of Celtic languages. Demographics. Mixed languages shelter, based largely on Irish with influence from an undocumented source. Some forms of Welsh Romani or Carla also combined Romani itself with Welsh language and English language forms. Biola Highland Traveller's language. Classification. Celtic divided into various branches. Lepontic, the oldest attested Celtic language, anciently spoken in Switzerland and in northern central Italy, from the Alps to Umbria. Coins with Lepontic inscriptions have been found in Noricum and Gallia Narbonensis. Celtiberian, anciently spoken in the Iberian Peninsula, in parts of modern Aragon, Old Castile, and New Castile in Spain. The relationship of Celtiberian with Gallaecian, in the northwest of the peninsula, is uncertain. Gallaecian, anciently spoken in the former Gallaecia, northwest of the peninsula. Gaulish languages, including Galician and possibly Noric. These languages were once spoken in a wide arc from Belgium to Turkey. They are now all extinct. Brittonic, including the living languages Breton, Cornish, and Welsh, and the extinct languages Cumbric and Pictish, though Pictish may be a sister language rather than a daughter of Common Brittonic. Before the arrival of Scoti on the Isle of Man in the 9th century, there may have been a Brittonic language in the Isle of Man. Goidelic, including the living languages Irish, Manx, and Scottish Gaelic. Scholarly handling of the Celtic languages has been rather argumentative owing to scarceness of primary source data. Some scholars distinguish continental Celtic and insular Celtic, arguing that the differences between the Goidelic and Brittonic languages arose after these split off from the continental Celtic languages. Other scholars distinguish between P-Celtic and Q-Celtic, putting most of the Gaulish and Brittonic languages in the former group and the Goidelic and Celtiberian languages in the latter. The P-Celtic languages are sometimes seen as a central innovating area as opposed to the more conservative peripheral Q-Celtic languages. The Breton language is Brittonic, not Gaulish, though there may be some input from the latter, having been introduced from southwestern regions of Britain in the post-Roman era and having evolved into Breton, still partially intelligible by modern Welsh and Cornish speakers. In the P-Q classification schema, the first language to split off from Proto-Celtic was Gaelic. It has characteristics that some scholars see as archaic, but others see as also being in the Brittonic languages. In the insular, continental classification schema, the split of the former into Gaelic and Brittonic is seen as being late. The distinction of Celtic into these four subfamilies most likely occurred about 900 BC according to Gray and Atkinson, but because of estimation uncertainty, it could be any time between 1200 and 800 BC. However, they only considered Gaelic and Brythonic. The controversial paper by Forster and Toth included Gaulish and put the breakup much earlier at 3200 BC plus or minus 1500 years. They support the insular Celtic hypothesis. The early Celts were commonly associated with the archaeological Urnfield culture, the Hallstatt culture, and the Latine culture, though the earlier assumption of association between language and culture is now considered to be less strong. There are legitimate scholarly arguments in favor of both the insular Celtic hypothesis and the P-Celtic, Q-Celtic hypothesis. Proponents of each schema dispute the accuracy and usefulness of the other's categories. However, since the 1970s the division into insular and continental Celtic has become the more widely held view, but in the middle of the 1980s, the P-Celtic, Q-Celtic hypothesis found new supporters, because of the inscription on the Larzac piece of lead, the analysis of which reveals another common phonetical innovation nanometer greater than nu, that is less accidental than only one. The discovery of a third common innovation would allow the specialists to come to the conclusion of a Gallo-Brittonic dialect. The interpretation of this and further evidence is still quite contested, and the main argument in favor of insular Celtic is connected with the development of the verbal morphology and the syntax in Irish and British Celtic, which Schumacher regards as convincing. While he considers the P-Celtic, Q-Celtic division unimportant and treats Gallo-Brittonic as an outdated hypothesis, Stifter affirms that the Gallo-Brittonic view is out of favor in the scholarly community as of 2008 and the insular Celtic hypothesis widely accepted when referring only to the modern Celtic languages, since no continental Celtic language has living descendants. Q-Celtic is equivalent to Goidelic, and P-Celtic is equivalent to Brittonic. Within the Indo-European family, the Celtic languages have sometimes been placed with the Italic languages in a common Italo-Celtic subfamily, a hypothesis that is now largely discarded, in favor of the assumption of language contact between pre-Celtic and pre-Italic communities. How the family tree of the Celtic languages is ordered depends on which hypothesis is used. Esker evaluates the evidence as supporting the following tree, based on shared innovations. Though it is not always clear that the innovations are not aerial features, it seems likely that Celtiberian split off before Cisalpine Celtic, but the evidence for this is not robust. On the other hand, the unity of Gaulish, Goidelic, and Brittonic is reasonably secure. Schumacher had already cautiously considered this grouping to be likely genetic, based, among others, on the shared reformation of the sentence initial, fully inflecting relative pronoun *ios, *ioed into an uninflected enclitic particle. Esker sees Cisalpine Gaulish as more akin to Lepontic than to Transalpine Gaulish. Celtic, Celtiberian, Nuclear Celtic, Cisalpine Celtic, Lepontic, Cisalpine Gaulish, Transalpine Goidelic, Brittonic, Transalpine Gaulish, Insular Celtic, Goidelic, Brittonic. Esker considers a division of Transalpine Goidelic Brittonic into Transalpine and Insular Celtic to be most probable because of the greater number of innovations in Insular Celtic than in Peak Celtic. and because the insular Celtic languages were probably not in great enough contact for those innovations to spread as part of a Sprachbund. However, if they have another explanation, then it is possible that P-Celtic is a valid clade, and the top branching would be Transalpine Goidelic Brittonic Goidelic Gallo-Brittonic Transalpine Gaulish Brittonic. Characteristics of Celtic languages. Although there are many differences between the individual Celtic languages, they do show many family resemblances. While none of these characteristics are necessarily unique to the Celtic languages, there are few if any other languages which possess them all. They include consonant mutations, inflected prepositions, two grammatical genders, Ivigesimal number system e.g., Cornish Wetek hard Jugends, 56. Verb subject object word order, an interplay between the subjunctive, future, imperfect, and habitual, to the point that some tenses and moods have ousted others. An impersonal or autonomous verb form serving as a passive or intransitive Welsh disgaff, I teach, versus Dysga, is taught, one teaches, Irish muanim, I teach, versus Muingter, is taught, one teaches. No infinitives, replaced by a quasi-nominal verb form called the verbal noun or verb noun. Frequent use of vowel mutation as a morphological device, e.g., formation of plurals, verbal stems, etc. Use of preverbal particles to signal either subordination or illocutionary force of the following clause. Mutation distinguished. Subordinators, relativizes particles for negation, interrogation, and occasionally for affirmative declarations. Infixed pronouns positioned between particles and verbs. Lack of simple verb for the imperfective. Have process with possession conveyed by a composite structure. Usually B plus preposition Cornish yma cathdim, I have a cat, literally, there is a cat to me. Use of periphrastic constructions to express verbal tense, voice, or aspectual distinctions. Distinction by function of the two versions of be verbs traditionally labeled substantive and copular. Bifurcated demonstrative structure. Suffix pronominal supplements, called confirming or supplementary pronouns. Use of singulars or special forms of counted nouns, and use of a singulative suffix to make singular forms from plurals, where older singulars have disappeared. Examples: Na bac lamak and basai is ni bakfade mak and basai leet. Don't bother with son the beggars, and not will bother son the beggars with you. Basai is the genitive of bakich. The igh the result of affection, the bh is the lenited form of be. Leet is the second person singular inflected form of the preposition la. The order is verb subject object in the second half. Compare this to English or French, which are normally subject verb object in word order. Pedwar Bimega Fedwar Eugen 4 on 15 and 420s Bimeg is a mutated form of Pimberg, which is pump plus dag. Likewise, Fedwar is a mutated form of Pedwar. The multiples of 10 are dag, Eugen, dagar Eugen, Jugen, Hanakant, Trigain, daga Thrigain, Pedwar Eugen, daga Fedwar Eugen, Kant, asterisk. Comparison table examples. Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Irish. Saulite na dawan uile sayer agus comhyananina ninatagasina g charter. Ta buerin reisuan agus and quanzias racu agus dlidiad fean diom parder mheon bray threchas iletha che acute ile. Manx. Ta dualifire rugged seyr as cori may yn zard shimas kiartin. Renji fuel taheri soon as kuishens oru as by ched our imerki richeli myr brarain. Scottish Gaelic. Targach uile dweener era breath sayer agus goen and ananurim s anan co irakian. Tariadr bridla reusing is Lukogai Zagasmarsen Bukwaya Darava Bithbionama Measg Finan and Spirid Bratherail, Breton. Jupaparano Delezagesh Hagogui Rioioganet and Holdud. Poel Harski and Zodes Hardelaut Hariont Bevan and Ale Ganta Giland Spurda Genbroideries. Cornish. Jenny's Frank Harpar YWOLL Tussan B Wise YN Arga Dinita Hagwayan Arga Guirio. In Jewies YN's Gans Reason Hark Houses Hagwai Taldedi Omton and EYL Orthwihila YN Spirus of Raided. Welsh. Genia PAWBYN Redak YN Jidrad AI Gilad Muner de Sahorlirao. FEU Siniska Adira RHESWM Achid Wabot Adila EPAWBYMDD Win Y Nalad Y Clown Muniz Breeds Si Modlone. Possible Celtic languages. It has been suggested that several poorly documented languages may possibly have been Celtic. Pictish was for a long time thought to be a pre-Celtic, non-Indo-European language of Scotland. It is now widely regarded as Celtic. Ligurian was spoken in northern Mediterranean coasts straddling southeast French and northwest Italian coasts, including parts of Tuscany, Elba Island and Corsica. Xavier Delamar argues that Ligurian was a Celtic language, similar to, but not the same as Gaulish. The Ligurian Celtic question is also discussed by Barueol. Ancient Ligurian is either listed as Celtic, or Para-Celtic. Camunic is an extinct language which was spoken in the first millennium BC in the Valcamonica and Valtellina valleys of the Central Alps. It has most recently been proposed to be a Celtic language. Lusitanian was spoken in the area between the Douro and Tagus rivers of western Iberia. It is known from only 5 inscriptions and various place names. It is an Indo-European language and some scholars have proposed that it may be a para-Celtic language, which evolved alongside Celtic and, or formed a dialect continuum or Sprachbund with Tartessian and Galician. This is tied to a theory of an Iberian origin for the Celtic languages. It is also possible that the Q-Celtic languages alone, including Goidelic, originated in western Iberia and, or shared a common linguistic ancestor with Lusitanian. Secondary evidence for this hypothesis has been found in research by biological scientists, who have identified deep-rooted similarities in human DNA found precisely in both the former Lusitania and Ireland, and the so-called Lusitanian distribution of animals and plants unique to western Iberia and Ireland. Both of these phenomena are now generally believed to have resulted from human emigration from Iberia to Ireland during the late Paleolithic or early Mesolithic eras. Other scholars see greater linguistic affinities between Lusitanian, Proto-Italic and Old European, Tartessian, spoken in the southwest of the Iberia Peninsula. Tartessian is known by 95 inscriptions with the longest having 82 readable signs. It is not known to be Indo-European and is generally left unclassified. However, John T. Koch argues that Tartessian was also a Celtic language.